How's everybody doing today? We're starting just a little bit early, mainly because the streaming software started as soon as I got all this together. So that's more of a my fault than a oh it just happened kind of thing. So yeah, we'll wait for people to get in, hang out, and we're going to be talking all about getting perfect 3D prints, or at least as perfect as you can get with the tech and everything that you have handy. See, we got Carlos and Paul coming in here. How you guys doing? Nadav was first, but he's not here anymore because I can't tag him. But we are streaming live on YouTube and Twitch as we do every week-ish. Last week, of course, we went on a Monday. I said, screw it. Maybe people are nursing some hangovers today. It is January 1st of 2022. So let's, like, I don't know, start it off right with talking about 3D printing, additive manufacturing. And Carlos is right. You want a perfect print? Just buy a damn Prusa. That's like literally the best way to get perfect prints. Buy a Prusa. So yeah, it's there's a lot to this. It is not even in a Prusa, right? Yes, running stock settings will get you basically perfect prints. However, it's not going to be fast. And I think a lot of people look at this industry and say, well, stuff takes a long time. I'm going to hold up a part. I don't have an NDA on this, so I can hold this up. It's a client part. It's going to be time-lapsed. You actually see there's another one behind me. There are two different pieces of this. There's this one, and then there's this one. They are different. I don't know how, but they're different, or I'm told they're different. This would be something like probably an 80-hour print stock. This took me less than 25 hours. It was like 22 and a half hours to get this thing done. And it is 350 grams of material for those that are wondering. I don't have a damn clue what it is. But it's brought up a lot of really good points about getting perfect prints, because hilariously, the best way to get perfect prints is to start with a good file. Yeah. If your file is crap, your prints are going to turn out like crap. And anything that's round, specifically round parts, and I'll hold this up so the camera can focus onto it, but you can see we've got some ghosting. Now, I went back and I looked at the file itself. Yeah, the file's not all that high poly. That's really the issue that we have. And Carlos asks, how comfortable are you with not giving perfect parts to clients? I think that's my main issue. I always want perfection. How do we tell clients that we need a couple of tries? You don't, because you don't. What we tell clients is we make what you send. And if you don't send a high-res file, you're not going to get a high-res file. Also, my white balance is screwed up, so let's hold up a white piece of paper and fix that real quick. Maybe? Are we gonna fix it? Seriously, it's like, okay, that's a little bit better. I gotta get a camera where I can adjust the white balance manually. But something like this, it was not as high poly as I would like to see, and you can actually feel the lines. I said, all right, what the hell's going on? I went and I looked, okay, the file's not all that high res. I found out the client's gonna paint it anyways, so they don't even care. They've never had these printed before, and it makes more sense for them to not have something all that high poly, where it takes more time to design, it's tougher, all that BS. But ultimately, the big thing is that setting expectations appropriately. We've had a couple of tries here, when it comes to businesses at least, where their expectations did not match what's possible. And understanding the limitations of the technology is what is going to be incredibly important for this. You need to make sure that you're not over-promising. And if you are finding someone that needs a lot of help like that, do it in resin. Because 9 times out of 10, resin's going to look chef's kiss perfect. But really, I want to talk more about FDM. because FDM has kind of been, well, my hope is that there are a lot of new FDM users out there, and then users that just got resin printers are not brand new to the industry. Again, we've talked about it, how toxic resin is, how dangerous it is, and I'm one of only a few creators that even admit to the fact that this stuff is crazy dangerous, and I'm still like on a mission to fix that. But, you know, either way, FDM, I think, is where I want to focus a lot of these efforts. We'll do a whole basics with supports and all that in resin soon, but I think FDM is more valuable because you can get FDM printers for stupid cheap. Actually, I just had someone comment on that CR10 clone video that we did, that they got a similar model for $179 delivered to their door on Amazon. And I'm sorry, but that is the definition of a damn good deal. I don't care how much effort that printer needs. It might need a little bit of tweaking, a BL Touch, you know, a flex plate from Wham Bam or something like that. You're getting a damn good printer that's 300 by 300 by 400 for less than $300. That's a really, really tough deal to beat. I think a lot of people are seeing this. But unfortunately, not everybody has Prusa money, and not all profiles are tuned as well as Prusa's profiles are. Great example. When you look at the previous Print Fail Friday, the one that came out yesterday, there were a couple of prints on there, one of which was on a Prusa Mini, and it looked like crap. Ultimately, I firmly believe that was a belt issue. I wish I could just, like, you know, do what we do in the video and, like, have it rolling right here, but this is live, so I can't do that. Unless someone is way smarter than me, but I'm doing all, like, this work on my own. There's, like, nobody behind the scenes helping me here. So, it's all just, you know, F it, we're doing it live. And speaking of doing it live, make sure you leave a like, get subscribed if you haven't, and join our Patreon. It's the first of the month, so now's the right time to join the Patreon. You get all the fun benefits of being involved in the Patreon without having to pay right at the end of the month. So hopefully Patreon changes that. I really hate that it's always on the first of the month. I want it to be monthly billing, because otherwise, past like the second week, there's no reason for people to join your Patreon. They wait, and then they forget. Anyways. But yeah, it is about, and it's patreon.com/3D Musketeers. Did I not say that? I probably should say that. It is all about making certain, though, that you're starting with a good model, right? And I've said this in how to get good prints with CAD. If your CAD model sucks, your print's going to suck. Understanding what the first layer should look like is important. Okay. This is a print failure. How did this fail again? Looking at it just stopped extruding. But we can see this is a white part. Let's get that to focus. Thank you. On the white part, you can see some brown, like, burn marks and stains and random bits of crap all over the place. It had a brim on it. That's why it looks kind of nasty. But that was a print failure that occurred because the first layer didn't go down well. And hilariously, it looks okay. Like, the rest of the print looks okay, and you can't always tell that that first layer doesn't go down well. And I think when you're starting, making certain that that first layer sticks kind of fixes a lot of your problems, right? If you've got a retraction problem where you're not retracting enough and you're oozing across your print, and then your print is coming up and hitting your nozzle, well, that's not a retraction problem. That's a first layer and bed adhesion problem, right? Carlos asks, don't do resin. Also, disposing is stuff people don't get told the dangers. It's scary, too, to think that maybe some days there will be desktop powder MJF-style printers. That's also dangerous. Yeah, it is. Iron Man is asking, we need to know how to get the printer set up. All right, so let's back up and let's talk about getting the printer set up. First, open the box. 2, follow the instruction guide. If it sucks, go find a video. We did an Ender 3. We did a CR10. I've done the Prusa Mini like 1-for-1 time with the better 3/4. The next big Prusa printer we get, we'll do a full build on it. But yeah, it it is kind of get it out and follow the instructions. And I hate to say that because a lot of the instructions do suck, but every printer is slightly different, right? The full kit of the Prusa Mini versus the mostly assembled, which is what I buy because it's like literally $50 more and saves me like 3 hours of time. Like, come on. And it's still fun to put it together, right? You still get some of the fun, but not all the BS. You know, there's just kind of a limit there. We keep, oh man, sorry, we keep having this frame drop issue. Iron Man, I know, I'm giving you crap just because I can. It's fun when I'm on my own and I can just give people crap because I can. Okay, so the first thing when you're dealing with trying to get a perfect print, you gotta make sure you got your bed level, right? Don't run your printer too fast. Start at 0.2 millimeter layers and go from there. We see people go all the way down to 0.05. 0.2, not 0.02, if that's what I said. But you want to start at the 200 micron level, and if you want to get smoother prints, you can work your way down into the lower layer lines, like a 0.1, 0.05. Do not change the nozzle. Start with the stock nozzle that it comes with. The 0.4 millimeter for most printers is perfect. You will get just fine prints. You're going to want to start with a test model similar to something like a Benchy. This is one of our Benchies, and I would say it's a pretty damn good Benchy. Although this Benchy was time-lapse, so on the other side, the side that was close to the time-lapse camera, we're going to have some scarring on there from the blobs that occur. The Benchy boat, for those that don't know, has complete control over every aspect of it. Everything on this boat is measurable. ct3d.xyz is where you can go. You can get all the information on how to measure your boats. But a lot of times, because these prints are so ubiquitous, everybody's done them. It's something to really look at. They take about an hour to make. We're going to be working on our own kind of torture test model that we can use. That way I've got some sort of like guideline that we can go off of when we're looking at doing this, right? Because a Benchy's cool, but it doesn't have my company name on the bottom of it, and I'd like to solve that problem, you know? Start at 200 micron layers. Make sure that first layer sticks. Run slow, and that whole running slow aspect is kind of important. Actually, I'm going to keep I was going to put the Benchy back up on the stand. I've got a, I'll try to move it and not break it. I've got a tensegrity table for the Benchy that I keep on top of my computer just because I think it's cool. See? Yeah. Anyways, they're just crazy fragile, and if you knock them too much, you'll break them. Because it's actually a bridge that goes in between. When it comes to the machine itself, a lot of times I say get it to print well bone stock. The minute you try to upgrade things, you're introducing risk. You're introducing variables that people like myself, the manufacturers, other people online may not necessarily be able to help you out with. And that's problematic. So start with the printer bone stock. I know an Ender 3 has crappy cooling from stock. Fine. Understand that, all right, one side of the boat's not going to look great, but if the rest of it looks really, really good, then I can look at upgrading to better cooling, right? Don't buy a printer saying, oh, I'm going to add upgrades to it before I even start, unless you already know what you're doing. If you already know what you're doing, this is not a problem anymore. It's simple. You just very quickly assemble it. You make your adjustments to it. But this is like on your 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, or 7th printer. Nadav makes a good point that Super Slicer has some amazing tuning and calibration prints to it. However, Super Slicer is not really a slicer I recommend for beginners. It has so many different options that beginners are going to find themselves way down a rabbit hole. I will say a big thing when it comes to software, do not use the software your printer came with unless it is required. So something like a printer with proprietary software, obviously you have to use it. But if it's just a Cura skin, go download Cura. Go download Cura, brand new, and find your printer in there. If it's an Ender 3 clone, use an Ender 3. If it's a CR10 clone, use a CR10. Don't try to find your exact printer manufacturer. You may not be able to. If you do want to figure it out, Super Slicer is a great way to calibrate printers, but that's more for tuning in filament, and we're going to get to that in just a bit. Iron Man says Super Slicer is the same as Prusa, really, and you're right, it is. They are very similar, but I think when you put Prusa Slicer on advanced mode, which I think very few people actually use Prusa Slicer in beginner mode, most are using it in intermediate or advanced, Super Slicer unlocks a lot of options that will be rabbit holes of problems. And I worry that the average user is going to find themselves a little frustrated in their ability to make things work, right? So I want to make sure that it's done correctly. Sorry, solo stream means I got to stop every now and then for some water. But I think that Cura is a good one to start with. Cura's options and integrated profiles are actually pretty damn good. If you do have a Prusa printer, just use Prusa Slicer. And if you have like an Ender 3 clone, or a CR, if you have a Creality clone of any type, go ahead and just use Prusa Slicer to me, because Prusa Slicer has better tuned profiles than Cura. However, something that's come up recently, and we are going to be doing a video about this, so make sure you guys stay tuned and get subscribed if you want that, is we are going to be doing a video all about tree supports versus the world. I did a poll on YouTube, just like whether or not you like the new Prusa Slicer, and a lot of the opposition was like, it doesn't have tree supports, it doesn't have tree supports. I used tree supports back in like 2017, 2016, when, you know, good printers were still pretty rough and tree supports were terrible. I guess now with better printers, it's gotten a lot better. Hey Mitch, how you doing? Fribble says Cura's UI is horrible show, however. Good experience with Prusa Slicer and Ender's Artilleries and any cubics. And, you know, Mitch, I agree with you. He's got a new computer. He's probably not installing Simplify 3D. Prusa Slicer is good enough to switch. I agree with the new 2.4 and Snug supports. Dude, death to Prusa Slicer. Or, Jesus, death to Simplify 3D. Death to Simplify 3D. Because, yeah, when you don't update a software for 3 years and your competition is updating relatively regularly, you're going to fall behind. Nadav says tree supports is magic nowadays. Well, we're going to find out. We're going to tune in a Cura profile. Actually, I'm probably going to use the stock Cura profile, use the stock Prusa Slicer profile, time-lapse both prints, compare things like material usage and all of that. But if you're a newbie, tree supports is not something you're looking at. You're looking at bone stock settings, something that's just going to work and not real be a pain in the ass, right? We want the printers to just work. And once you get them to work, you can look at tuning things in, such as steps per millimeter. That's a big one on Enders specifically. We find that they're not ever all that great. You know, maybe they're out a little bit. They're generally over extruding a hair. And you can accomplish this by reducing the flow rate, but sometimes you won't get a full and complete coverage of the top layer of your print, and that's kind of bad. I believe, though, that if we start at the bottom and we work our way up on the printer, that's really where we need to be. Looking at making sure that your bed is level, because let's be real. If you found this video, most likely you're not working with $1,000 Prusa. You're likely working with an Ender 3 or something like that, which needs to be leveled. And there's nothing wrong inherently with needing to level a printer, which technically is called tramming, but I'm not going to get into that argument today. It's a pain in the ass sometimes. It's not bad, but it's cumbersome and time consuming. But it is pretty simple to add a BL Touch. Now, again, that requires firmware and hardware modifications, so we're not going to go down that path just yet. Let's look at getting that bed level, and there are some pretty easy ways to do it. I believe it's Angus with Maker's Muse, although it could have been CNC Kitchen. They both do great tutorial videos on leveling beds. We're going to be doing one as well, but we use a feeler gauge. What we do is we set the printer all the way to Z0, home it, then we do Z whatever you want to level it to. We level to 0.2, and then I use a feeler gauge, 0.2 millimeter, and I make sure that it is tight. Now, a lot of people will do it at Z0, use the paper trick, but a lot of times that's too close or too far. It's not right. The feeler gauge tends to work really, really well. And Iron Man says, where do I find tree supports? You find that inside of Cura. It's not available in any of the other slicers yet. The CR Touch is easy AF to install. If you need to do firmware upgrades to it or the printer does not natively support it, it is not easy. Because flashing firmware can actually brick a printer if you don't know what you're doing, you know, the entire time, right? You got to make sure you know what you're doing or you're going to hurt your printer. That's why I say don't make upgrades immediately. It's better off to really get it dialed in first. So let's talk about getting that first layer to stick. First, the bed. It's either made of glass or it's a flex plate or it's an aluminum plate. Clean it. Make sure it's clean. If it's glass, wash it with the hottest water that you can handle and dish soap. If it's a PEI bed, alcohol is generally a good way to do that, but dish soap is always a good second. And if it's aluminum, that one's tough because a lot of times you can't, get to it easily. Connie says it is Maker's Muse and they use feeler gauges. Great. Perfect. Hey, that's what we need. Again, flashing firmware is not something that I think a brand new user should find themselves getting into. Unless you have experience with coding, you understand some of the risks of flashing firmware, that it can be as easy as putting in an SD card and it instantly flashes itself. I think that, like, for the brand new, like, Christmas noob, right? The younger kids that just got them for the holidays, I don't want them messing with firmware. I worry because let's look at the optics of it, right? If you are an adult, you don't mind if you blow the board, you'll just get another one for $30. It's not that big of a deal, but when you're a kid and mom and dad or grandpa, grandma, aunt, uncle, whoever got you a printer, and the first thing you do is break it, and like you break it to the point of where you need to order parts for it, that's a problem. And the optics don't start off well. We want to have the optics starting well so that when you ask for upgrades or you say, hey, I'm going to do this upgrade, everyone's proceeding with confidence, right? Now, I could go deep into like input shaping, Clipper, although I don't like the community for Clipper, but you know, there's lots of things you can do to make a printer print like freaking perfect. But I believe a lot of it is getting that first benchy and showing it off. Because remember, chances are the people you're showing it to, unless they're like on Reddit or something like that, might not have ever seen a 3D print either, right? So it's all about setting those expectations. The filament your printer comes with, do not use it. You should not use it. Go buy filament. Printed Solid makes amazing filament. They're Jessie PLA, they're Jessie PET. Actually, right here. How many spools of Jessie do I have around me? Here's a spool of Jessie. Here's a spool of Jessie. And this part is actually done in gunmetal gray Jessie PETG. And that's literally filament that's like on my floor because I ran out of storage space. By the way, we're working we're working to where was I going with this? Oh, working to do a video all about cheap storage. I just have to be able to buy it. Hi, Lightspeed. No, don't throw away the kilo from Prusa. You know what I'm talking about. Stop it. Be nice. Jesse is about $19 a kilo for their PLA, and I think $21 for their PETG. Although I do recommend Brad's orange. Brad is actually a team member of ours. He's got his own color with printed solid, and $1 from every spool of that gets donated to charity. Hell yeah. Gotta love supporting charities where you can. PrintedSolid.com. I really should have an affiliate link, but I don't. I'll have to bother Dave to get one. Dave was actually on the podcast a couple episodes ago, so if you want to hear about Printed Solid, how it works, and all the cool stuff, you can go check out that episode. Built Over Bot says, yes, throw away the Prusa as well. If you're going to throw away a Prusa, throw it in the mail to me. I'll even give you my address. But yeah, I believe that there is a lot of opportunity out there for good filament. With that being said, cheap filament from Amazon is probably going to be okay as well. If you're brand new to it, stay away from the silks. Do not use glow in the dark because it is abrasive. Yeah, and don't use GST. I don't like GST filament. I've had a really, really terrible experience with their filament. But yeah, GST is cheap, real cheap. We had some come in with a client printer and its diameter went from 1.64 all the way to 2.2 millimeters. Like, that's not good. Carlos asks, what about Matter Hackers? Matter Hackers makes good filament. I don't personally use it. It's expensive to me. If I'm going to buy Matter Hackers filament, I'm just going to go buy Atomic. I think Atomic has some of the great colors out there. Like their Starry Night is still, to this day, my favorite color of filament ever. But some people do have good experience with GST. I have not. I've reached out to them a couple of times, and I've gotten nothing but crickets, so I'm not. Yeah. Well, I reached out to Dave, and Dave's like, I want to come. I want to be a guest on the podcast. I'm like, hell yeah, let's do it. There's a different kind of a relationship there, and I'm willing to pay more money to support a local business, local-ish. They're in Delaware. I'm in Florida. But, you know, a business that I can trust, an owner that's really cool, active in the community. I mean, Dave has just donated basically $2,000 today to the Sanjay Foundation. Come on. Like, that's pretty great. That's pretty great. I don't believe that trying to find the bottom of the barrel filament as cheap as you can is the right move. If you're using crappy materials, right, garbage in, garbage out. If you don't have good materials, you're going to have a bad experience overall. GST is always running sales. They're always running like, 10 kilos for $9 a kilo or something like that. It's ridiculous. And there's no way that it's made in the USA or made in the EU or made wherever they say it's made, because they say they make it in basically every area for the money that they're selling it for. It's just not possible. Anyways. And yes, for those in Canada land, Sparta 3D. I have like 12 kilos of Sparta 3D. It's actually those boxes that you can see down there. That's all Sparta 3D. I'm out of storage. We're going to start to print with the Sparta here pretty soon, but I got a lot of their matte PLAs, and I'm really excited for that. Iron Man says, what's with the frickin' commercials? I insert ads randomly throughout the video, cause, money. Sorry. Put on an ad block, I guess. I don't know. Inland PLA and ABS are okay too. They are if you have a Micro Center near you. Micro Center does stock filament, and I recommend their stuff. I used to use it, but the closest Micro Center is a 14-hour round trip for me, so that's not going to happen. I've kind of gone toward the American-made materials where we can. I like to support the small businesses. I do. As a small business myself, I like to support the small businesses where we can. Anyways, filament is kind of out there. Everybody has their own opinions about it. I say don't buy bottom of the barrel stuff when you're starting. Get a spool of the good stuff. Get some Jesse. Get some Prusament. Go get something from Matter Hackers. Their new quantum stuff is pretty cool. I'd like to try that. It is expensive, though. Get some Atomic. IC3D makes pretty decent filament. So there's lots of options out there. If you're in Canada land, Sparta makes good filament. Yeah, I built over bot says I thought Micro Center was going at it, but it's good lord, I hope not. There's no way Micro Center can be going out of business. I hope they're not going out of business. God, it's so much fun. Anytime I had to go to Georgia, I would always stop at both Micro Centers in Georgia. It's the promised land for geeks. It's like Fry's. Like what Fry's used to be and what Radio Shack should have been, but never was. Rip Radio Shack. Good luck and Godspeed. I don't believe that... Well, let me rephrase that. Beginners should start with PLA. Start with PLA. Don't do ABS. Don't do PETG. Don't do Flex. Stop it. You're sitting there saying, well, Grant, I want to do those things. I know. I get it. I feel it. I'm the same way. Dial in PLA. Then go ahead and play around with other materials, right? Ultimately, you want to get one material dialed the frig in. And if we sit here and we talk about how to dial in flex, good Lord, I could be here all damn day talking about dialing in flex filament. Because it is so different for every type of printer. Like things like speeds and, anyways, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. For PLA, run it at like 45 to 60 millimeters second. Basically, any printer can handle those speeds. You're going to have no issues printing it. Anywhere from 180 to 210 centigrade should be fine. You can run temp towers. They're easiest to be done out of Super Slicer. Super Slicer can generate the temp towers. I think is really, really cool. But realistically, if you're seeing some stringing, you can try extra retraction. If you're still seeing more stringing, turn the temp down. Right? When we run PLA at 215, but we're also printing at 150 millimeters a second. So we're adding that extra heat to make sure that we're pumping enough heat into that material as it's being forcibly pushed through a nozzle. Now, I'm going to be that guy. The video's not out yet, but since you guys are here, I've got some toys. We're going to have the video, I think, maybe I'll make it Wednesday's video. I've got a couple of Revos here. And a thing to note, and yes, they are absolutely as cool as I was hoping they would be. They just came in. I'm so excited to put these on printers. But these are like the only clean nozzles that I have reasonably close to being handy. I don't know if the camera's going to pick up the light through it. Oh, you know what? I was going to try to put a light through it, but I don't have a light that's small enough. Anyways, the diameter of these nozzles is crazy, crazy tiny. 0.4 millimeters. Don't try to put something that's abrasive through it. Also, God, look at this one-handed nozzle on and off. I could go on all day. I love the damn Revo. Go pre-order a Revo if you haven't already. If you've got the cash, right? They're not cheap. But they're totally worth it. Also, the Micro comes with the cutest little fan. It's so cute. Like, I want you to understand, that's like half the size of a regular printer fan. Anyways, don't look at upgrading your printers with a Revo immediately. Like, I love the Revo, and I think the Revo is a great hot end to be putting on brand new printers. But I don't think it's good to begin with. Like, I believe if we were going to be selling printers, which I don't think we're going to get into that, we're more of a service company. We make parts for people. But if we were going to be getting into selling printers, I would probably only be selling printers with Revos on them. Revo makes it easy to take the nozzle on and off. And that's why I say don't change the nozzle on your printer. For those of you that don't know, and I think most people here are pretty experienced, but I keep losing my train of thought. I'm reading the comments and I'm losing my train of thought. I'm sorry. But nozzle switching. Okay. It has to be done hot. And you may not know that. It has to be done really hot. And if you don't do it hot, you're going to have a problem. You're going to end up having leaks in your nozzle or your heat break. And that's going to be bad. Now, what I recommend is on an ender or something like that, run the stock hot end until it dies. You're going to end up wearing out the PTFE probably within 2 or 3 kilos. That's pretty standard here. And then at that point, look at upgrading the nozzle. Or actually, look at upgrading the whole damn hot end. Because at that point, you've likely figured out how to get that printer to where you need it to be, right? Smart. And the Revo specifically, here's a Revo 6. The Revo specifically can do it when it's cold. I think the Revo on an Ender is amazing. We are probably going to put one of the Revos on an Ender, although I might just put it on the Ram Bam Mutant so I can put it on multiple printers and not feel like I've just sequestered myself to using my best hot end on one printer. But the Revo 6 is an identical drop-in to a V6, and they're amazing. No one's... And E3D does not pay me. Well, they're patrons, but it's a $5 patron, whatever. Anyways, I'm not going to get into the stuff around that. Anyways, we believe that utilizing stock settings will get you 95% of the way there. Cura's stock settings are pretty good the way that they are. You don't have to change them, but I recommend looking at tuning specifically, initially, your steps per millimeter, your retraction, and your temperatures. Once you deal with those things, everything else gets pretty simple after that, right? I would look at retraction first. If you're utilizing an Ender-based printer where it's Bowden, you want to remove the filament relatively fast, 60 to 65 millimeters a second on the retract, but the detract, where you're pushing it back in, slow. Like 30-ish is fine, because what'll happen is you deal with ramming, and ramming is not a lot of fun. So here's what's going on, right? You're pulling the filament in, out, in, out, in, out for all of those retractions. And if you do it very quickly, you're creating back pressure, right? Because plastic work hardens. It does. That's why it breaks. It work hardens over time. And so if you're making small moves with very tiny retractions, you're just heat treating the tip of that filament, and you're going to cause a jam. Those are things that you need to look at fixing. So look at doing the minimum amount of retraction possible, because you don't want to grind your filament. I also look at saying minimum travel for retraction. Tune that in. I would set it at least 10 millimeters. That's like it's a little bit under half an inch. There's really no reason to... I don't know if you want it any closer than that, because then you'll likely get a lot of little dots on prints, and that tends to be a problem. Let me get some water. Retraction is one of those things that when you post a photo with bad retraction, you're going to instantly get the person that says dry your filament. Don't worry about wet filament. Don't worry about it. If you're brand new, don't worry about it. I live in Florida, okay? I want to point out, this is in my office right now. It is 82.7 degrees Fahrenheit. I will change it to centigrade for all of you that don't live or that aren't around here. It is 28.5 degrees Fahrenheit. It is 57% ambient humidity. Otherwise known as very hot and a little damp. A little damp. We will see some water ingress on PETG, but I haven't really noticed much on PLA. Carlos, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate it. Again, thank you for donating last week. We appreciate it. And of course, if any of you guys want to support the channel directly, you can do so at patreon.com/3dmusketeers. You can leave super chats. That gets my attention a lot easier than me trying to look over at the comments as well. But yeah, we are actively creating content all the time, and if you guys want to support the creators, we appreciate your support. But yeah, it does. Water can affect your prints, right? When you're looking at PET, water will cause it to be stringy, but unless your prints are sounding like Rice Krispie treats, don't worry about it. Don't worry about water. Awesome Patreon. Looking forward to it. Thanks, man. Now it's the first. So now Patreon charges. Oh, God. Such a problem with Patreon. But it is a good platform for creators. So I'll give them credit there. But Yeah, wet filament, I wouldn't worry about it. If you're posting photos onto a place like Reddit or Twitter, and people are telling you to dry your filament, just, I'm like half tempted to say ignore them. Because ultimately, unless you're using something like a nylon or polycarbonate, a material that is hygroscopic, it's not that big of a deal. Stringing can be caused by too much heat. It can be caused by too little retraction. There are a lot of reasons that cause this. And I know for those of you that aren't in the South, it's currently 27 degrees centigrade outside. And it's January 1st, okay? Like, it's very, very cold up north, and when it's cold, it's dry. So the best time to 3D print is in the winter because it heats your house as well. I don't want people to worry about things like wet filament. I've seen users sit there and say, oh my gosh, it's wet filament. How do I solve this? I'm like, no, stop. It's probably not. Yeah, Florida is about 1,000% humidity. Guaranteed. Every time. I just added 1 next to whatever number it shows me. It's 157% ambient humidity. Because it's basically a swamp here. It's basically a swamp. But, geez, Duff says it's negative 30°C. Bro. No thanks. Anyways, guys, I gotta stay on topic here. You guys, I get off topic so easy. So don't worry about the filament. Don't worry about drying it. Get a good quality brand filament and go from there. When it comes to temperatures, again, 180 to 210 is probably fine. If you're running slow, probably land somewhere between 180 and 200. 210 would likely overheat most PLAs at 40 millimeters a second, and you're going to see it cause warping. If your PLA warps, like if the bow of your benchy is all warped, now this is actually a pretty clean benchy. If the bow of your benchy warps, you need to look at better cooling options. Now, you can cheat. You can just put a desk fan in front of your printer, and a lot of times that actually helps quite a bit. But you do need to make sure that you're not overcooling it, right? For materials like ABS, they don't want any cooling at all. And if they get cooling, they tend to fail, right? They'll tend to warp. PLA is very, very forgiving. Now, if you're finding on a tall print that it's not sticking, let's say you're trying to do like a lightsaber and you're trying to print it standing vertically, put a brim on it. And a brim is, so there's a great terminology thing, good trick that I learned a while ago, brim versus skirt. A skirt flows around you, a brim is attached to your hat, right? So a brim is what you want attached to your part. One thing to note in Prusa Slicer 2.4, it gives you a 0.1 millimeter brim gap, which is bullshit as far as I'm concerned. I don't want that. I want a 0 millimeter brim gap so it goes on exactly. Chris Polks asks, late to the party, do you have any other favorite calibration prints? I'm looking for something that has use beyond measurement. Yeah, the benchy boats kind of suck because they don't float. They got a Dolly Parton problem, and they kind of float upside down. Chep cubes are always good. I like the cal cubes because they're fast, like a 40 mil or 20 mil cal cube. Those are pretty good. We've got our own little torture test. It's up on Prusa printers if you want to go find it. But that's more for Prusa 2.4 to try to play around with it. Yes, Lightspeed in Prusa Slicer, you can do it too. But it's just stock at 0.1, which is ridiculous. I don't know why, but it is. But yeah, the Benchy's not a bad print, but yeah, like Chris is saying, it needs to have some use. Now, we are working on some ourselves. We're hoping to have those out in Q1 that are good sample prints that have functionality to them. Something like bit drivers, stuff like that. Those can be good, but ultimately, a lot of good calibration prints don't have a lot of good value outside of being good calibration prints. A lot of people will use the calibration prints as also showing off what the colors look like. And if that's the case, the Benji is actually a pretty good model for it. It's got flat surfaces, it's got curved surfaces, both concave and convex. It's got top layers, it's got slanted layer. There's a lot to it, and I think the Benji is a pretty good model overall. But yeah, they do kind of suck in terms of they don't really have a lot of function. Chep cube is always good. We're going to look at doing one ourselves, similar to a Chep cube, but not a cube. Some sort of calibration print. We'll see what happens. I don't know yet, but we're going to see what happens. Actually, we have a couple of new engineers on staff, and that's their first challenge, is to go ahead and make some sort of calibration print. Because those are always fun. Everybody loves calibration prints. But tune those in, right? If you don't know what's going on and you're still having questions, I know we're not going to be able to answer everything. This is it's a live stream. So I'm kind of working with, I have a list of notes of things to talk about, but the chat is going to end up really moving me toward where they want me to move. So yeah, kind of is what it is. Yeah. God, I'm not on my game today. Normally I don't say ums and uhs often, but I'm not on my game today. I apologize for that, guys. We get a little bit more water. Sierra says Happy New Year. Yes, Happy New Year to everybody as well. Let's get some water here. Okay. I will say for newbies, do a Benji. You just gotta do a Benji. It's the most ubiquitous 3D model on the planet. It's the most downloaded 3D model to date. Just do it. You got to do at least one of them. But yeah, find a cal print that works for you. There are a bunch out there. Cubes are great because they're fast. Benchies are great because there's more to it than just flat sides. When we look at things like dimensional accuracy, all right, so let's say you do a cal cube and it's a 40 mil cube and it comes up short X and Y, but high on the Z, right? So let's say it's like 39 by 39 and a half by 45. You've got some steps per millimeter problems. It's not that big of a deal. I would fix the Z, but I don't know if it's like, if you're a millimeter, I would fix it. Half a millimeter, if you're just a hobbyist, it's probably not that big of a deal. But there are easy ways to determine this. There's a formula. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I do it the old school way because I did it, the old school way since I started, which is tell it to move 100 millimeters. Did it move 100 millimeters? No. Adjust it. This one is a little bit odd. Okay. Well, I guess it's not. It makes sense. More steps per millimeter means it moves more. Less steps per millimeter means that it moves less. Don't change it by a lot unless it's really, really far off, right? Great example, we had an Ender 5 Plus come in, and its E axis, that's your extruder, was set to 150 millimeters, steps per millimeter. It needed to be like 95. It was way off. And no matter what we did, I'm like, I can't get good prints out of this damn thing. I finally measured it. I'm like, oh, shit, there's your problem. The steps per millimeter weren't right. I automatically assumed that the person knew what they were doing. And unfortunately, they bought the printer used from somebody else, and that somebody else didn't do a good job of fixing it. That was actually an interesting set of live streams. We found a bug in TH3D's code that's now been fixed. I got to talk with Tim Hooglin personally on the stream. It was cool. Chris Polk says, Benchy bin, ? Something that could hold little bits and bobs and stack. If you want stuff that holds little bits and bobs and stacks, you should go support Clockspring 3D on Patreon. Clockspring is one of my favorite, print-in-place model creators. Let me see if I can move my head enough so you can see him. Yep, the battery bin's behind me. There's a AA battery, or AA with the 2 dots, AAA with the 3 dots. Those are Clockspring models. Are there any other Clockspring models? Oh, yeah. Yep. Let's find it. It's hard to do on camera. Right there's another Clockspring model. I think that's the Catalyst capsule. But they're all print-in-place stuff, and I really, really like his models. So if you're looking for something like that, you can. The problem is they take a long time and they're not great for immediate calibration. So bins for parts, clock spring for sure, 100%. And if you have other creators that do like bins and stuff like that, print and play stuff, someone send them over to me because I've got a problem with little bins and I could always use more. I want more. I don't need more. I want more. But all right, let's fast forward into, let's say you've got your slicer set up. Okay, with your steps per millimeter, you need to make sure that you save it. If you just change your steps per millimeter and that's it, you don't go to save to EEPROM or M500, I think is the command to save. Might be M501. Verify that. Someone I'm sure in the comments will tell me. You know, whatever. Oh, Iron Man says, send the bins or send the files. Send me the creator so I can support them. I love supporting other creators as well, especially other content creators. I don't know. I like storage items. We've got some things that a buddy of ours found at IKEA that we're going to be using to redo all of our filament storage here pretty soon. As soon as they come back in stock, I'll go ahead and buy a bunch of them. But yeah, let's move past steps per millimeter and let's look at actual kinematics of the printer. We talked about this, I think it was last week, about making sure that your belts are tight but not too tight. And hilariously, I found a print for Print Fail Friday that was of a Prusa printer, a printer that should tell you these things, and the person likely did not go through that setup. And it ended up in a situation where it didn't work out great for him. So, you know, that is something to be aware of. Yeah, make sure that you do those things appropriately. I worry that your belts may not come properly tensioned from the factory, or they may not be properly tensioned by the person. If you are assembling the printer yourself, make sure that you've got enough space in between your drive gears and your motor so that nothing hits it. Make sure all the drive gears are tight. There are some very finite things that can result in crappy printing, right? But I do firmly believe 95% of it starts with a clean bed. If your bed is clean, a lot of the rest of it is pretty simple from there. Oh, where else should we go from here? Let's talk about first layers. First layers are a big deal too. If I tell you, oh, not too close, not too far, you don't know what that looks like. So too far is going to look like individual lines being laid down. They won't look like one cohesive flat plane of material. With it being too close, okay, it's going to have ridges. It's going to look like a Ruffles potato chip because Ruffles have ridges. They don't pay me to say that. Grant, stop advertising people that don't pay you. Gosh. Oh, anyways. It's going to look like it has ridges, and that means you're a little bit too close. Now, caveat, if you are using a textured build plate, now particularly textured PEI, those need to have much closer first layers than smooth plates do. So understand what plate you have first. A Creality glass plate with a little black dots on it, standard, don't worry about that. But a textured sheet, like a Prusa textured sheet, those you need to be closer than you would think. So a little bit of squish in there is needed. But you want, if it goes down, it's too far. If it comes up, it's too close. And you can adjust either utilizing Live Z. So if you have a Prusa, you can adjust using the Live Z as it's printing, or you can grab the knobs and start turning the knobs. Now, remember, you have to think about it as if you're looking at it top down. So when you turn it this way, it gets tighter. So this way is tighter, which is actually counterclockwise. So it's counterclockwise when you're looking at it top down. It's proper when you're looking at it bottom up. So just remember, if you want it tighter, it pulls away from the nozzle. So if you turn it to the right, which is funny, I don't know if this is the right for you. It's the right for me. My right is over here. But if it's to the right for you, that's likely pulling the bed away. But don't just do it a bunch in one corner, because remember that one corner affects the other corners. You got to do them all a little bit. So it is kind of like doing a dance. So make sure you get that first layer set well. Being too close is a little bit easier to deal with than being too far, okay? Something to note there. When we look at what's available to get your first layer right, there are induction sensors, there are capacitive sensors, and there are touch sensors. So the touch sensor is your BL touch, or they have like nozzle probes. Inductive sensors are like the Prusa Pinda sensor, and capacitive sensors are like the TH3D sensor. Those all can help you, but they do require the printer to be modified. Now, a CR Touch, which is the Creality's version of a BL Touch, sometimes can just be plugged in and added. But that does involve rewiring part of the printer. You got to move wires and put them into place. That's a thing, okay? You got to be safe about that stuff. That's why I say don't do this stuff initially. But if your printer does come with a BL Touch, oh my gosh, use it. If your printer comes with a BL Touch or a capacitive sensor and it still has bed springs, it might be an IDEX printer. Then that's a whole different level of problems. But if it's not an IDEX printer, make sure that you tighten those, put something there so the bed can't move. A big problem that we see, and it's why I moved away from manually leveled build plates, is if you're prying on the build plate to pull the part off, you're gonna be messing with its level. So if you don't take the actual plate off every time, whether that's a piece of glass or a flex plate, you're going to have to relevel your bed a lot more times than you might want to. I know people that have enders that have never releveled their beds because they take off their build plate or their flex plate every single time, and therefore they're not imposing a lot of stress onto the printer itself. Something to note. Dominic says, if you buy a used printer, always reset the EEPROM. That's actually a really good idea, assuming the EEPROM is properly programmed. I would say don't buy a used printer for your first printer. You can, but it's not, you know, I don't know. Not a huge fan of buying used printers personally, because then you're potentially dealing with somebody else's problems. Iron Man says, my printer just stopped squirting filament at half done. WTF. I manually squeeze filament, check, and it's fine. WTF. In a situation where your printer stops extruding during the print, check to make sure that your drive gear is actually still turning. If your drive gear is turning and your filament is not moving, you are jammed. You could have heat creep. I've got a lot of examples of heat creep on my desk. Heat creep is where the filament expands in the throat and basically stops it from passing into the nozzle. These are examples of heat creep. Focus, thank you. Those are examples of heat creep. Actually, let me flip that around. These two are examples of heat creep. There you go. That's an example of heat creep. And heat creep can occur when you don't have enough cooling on your hot end. If you do have a printer that is a little bit older, you might have to replace the PTFE liner. So if it is a Creality style printer, make sure that you go ahead and replace that PTFE, get some Capricorn tube. And mine is not handy. It's on the other side of the room and I'm not getting up during the stream. But yeah, Capricorn Bowden tube is absolutely worth the money. We did some testing for it and yeah, it gives much, much better prints. If your printer is new, you're having these problems, I would look to... I would pull your filament out, make sure that it's clean, but I would make sure that your drive gear is tight on your extruder, because if it's not, you might have a problem. I keep dropping frames. I don't know why this is occurring, but I apologize. Yeah, if you can hear the motor clicking, you're skipping steps. That's another thing to note. If you're printing here, tick, 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 your printer is skipping steps, and likely it's your extruder. normally the kinematics of a standard 3D printer make it so it's pretty easy to work with, okay? The X and Y don't generally click, because it's not often that they get to a point where it's going to warp and become a problem like that. If it is an Ender 3v2, which I had mine in here last week, but I put it back on the set. We needed to test with it. I would check to make sure your drive gear is good. Was your drive gear turning and your filament wasn't moving? If so, you had a jam. And if you're using cheap filament, that can be a big problem. It's why I say not to use cheap filament. Anyways, there can be a myriad of reasons of why your printer randomly stops running. It could be bad G-code. It could have been a mild power blip that caused it to stop heating. You could have gone into thermal runaway. There are so many reasons, and without like having more information, we're kind of like, we can start guessing. Stop using GST filament with a brand new printer. Well, drop frames again. Okay, stop using GST filament with a brand new printer. Buy quality filament and remove that problem. Why don't you measure the diameter of your filament and tell me if it's out of spec? The Hatfield Hot and Fix was the first mod I made. I don't even know what that is. What is the Hatfield Hot and Fix? Now I'm going to look this up. What does it do? I don't even know what this does. But I'm curious. I'll have to look at it after I'm assuming it's cutting the tube appropriately. Yeah. Anyways. Again, filament brand matters so friggin' much. Look, if you want cheap filament and you're willing to roll the dice, go buy GST. You're not going to get cheaper filament. But if you want to remove filament as being the potential problem, roll with a good quality brand, a brand that you can know, that you can trust, and all of that. And see, this is the thing. He got GST because it was recommended to him. Yeah, some people have great experience with it. Some people don't. I don't recommend. If the filament costs less than $15 a kilo and it's not like on stupid sale, I don't really recommend it. I don't. There are levels of cheap where it becomes, instead of affordable, it becomes cheap. What about dual extruders? Stop. If you just got a brand new printer, don't look at dual extruders. I have one dual extruder printer. One. And it's an IDEX. Technically, my Lulzbot could be a dual extruder, but I've never had it. There's no reason for dual extrusion. If you want multicolor, go get a printer that's designed for it. Go get a Prusa with an MMU. Or a tool changer if you want to spend that kind of money. The dual extrusion adds a complete and utter level of problem, right? On my IDEX printer, which is out of frame, but it's up there. We got a printer in for review. I cannot get it to reliably print at all. I can get it to reliably print with each nozzle individually, but I cannot get it to reliably print in 2-color mode. And that is because the nozzles are not even with each other, and there is no way for me to do it because one of the grub screws that hold the throats in place is in so tight it breaks hex keys. And it's also 1.5mm hex key. So, not going to work. Iron Man, your retraction is way too high. Tried it like 7. The Mighty says, since I have my printer for about 2 months, I only use Amazon Basics PLA and it's never failed me. And you know what? I can agree with that. I've used Amazon Basics PLA and their PET back before I was really settling on manufacturers. It's not bad. It's actually a little expensive. You can go get better quality filament made in America from printed solid for less money than Amazon Basics, or at least you used to be able to. Now I'm curious. Let's find out. PLA filament. Yep. Overture is 23. Amazon is 23. go buy printed solid. It is literally more affordable and it's better quality shit. Oh, the Mighty says they're in Germany. Well, that would be a great reason why you should not buy from printed solid. Yeah, when you're not in the States, filament options are considerably lower. It is definitely harder to find cheaper filament overseas. Amazon Basics is great filament then. Who else is over there that I know to be good? Their names are escaping me, but if you know anyone that sells good filament over in the EU, let me know and we'll shout them out as well. But dude, good quality filament is literally the basis. We talked about first layers. But, and hilariously, Iron Man had a fail the exact way that I'm talking about, right? Where he's pulling it in and out, in and out, in and out, in and out, and you're gonna have a problem. Oh yeah, Das Filament, of course, Germany, Das Filament. Come on, Grant, you should have known better than that. Yeah, but this whole pushing filament in and out of a hot end, 10 millimeters, all right? 10 millimeters is almost half an inch for all you Yanks out there. And that's rough. That's really rough, because if you're not moving and extruding 10 millimeters of filament, you're retracting over that same stuff over and over and over again. It's tough to do. And if you are using Bowden, like the Mighty says, the retraction is 4.8. With Capricorn tube, you can run less retraction because there's less backlash inside of the tube itself. Something to note. Yeah, I had to get some water. Let me do an ad break here real quick, and then we'll get right back into it. All right, and as always, this podcast is supported by 3D Musketeers. If you want to get awesome 3D prints made in America, you can do so at 3dmusketeers.com. I'm the owner of 3D Musketeers, if that wasn't immediately obvious. 3D Musketeers basically pays for the YouTube channel, and I love making the awesome content. But if you want to support us directly, you can do so by dropping some super chats in the comments right now. You can support us over at Patreon, and we are going to be bringing up channel memberships and all of that here on YouTube very, very soon. But yeah, make sure if you're not subscribed, you go ahead and get subscribed. Your support would be great. We did over 3,000 new subscribers in the year of 2021, and we only started in March. So I'm going to be curious to see what we can do in 22 with all of your support. So I greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys for everything that you do. Sierra's talking about utilizing PLA Plus. I still recommend starting with regular PLA. PLA Plus has some 11 herbs and spices and stuff in there, which can be a pain in the ass for newbies. Again, this is all about getting good prints for newbies. I'm getting off track because there's a lot of chat going on and I'm being distracted. So I apologize for newbies that are like, this guy's all over the damn place. I know, I'm sorry. I'm also in a lot of pain today and it's making it very difficult to focus. You see me adjusting and moving a lot. It's because I'm in a lot of pain and I'm trying to like get comfortable. So I apologize, guys. But yeah, for those that don't know, I have 2 herniated discs and that's why my hair is long. It's a thing. We're going to be shaving it for charity. Brad's going to be doing the shaving. It's going to be a thing whenever I can get back surgery. That'll be a thing. Anyways, when we look at good quality prints, it is so freaking subjective. So let's take a look at what makes a good quality print. Smoothness. All right, when you're moving across a print, you will be able to hear it, right? So is my mic going to pick this up? A little bit. Picks it up a little bit. I don't want you to think that ridges are a problem. Oh, something to point out too. The Mighty's talking about using glow-in-the-dark filament. Glow-in-the-dark filament is crazy abrasive. Not only do you need a hardened nozzle, you need a hardened extruder gear, and you are going to tear through your Bowden tube. So make sure that you have spare laying around. So have fun with that. I don't like glow-in-the-dark filament. I don't like any abrasive filament, although we print a lot with it, but we have specific abrasive printers. There is a big community on Twitter. You can absolutely hit us up there. I've got a couple of Enders. I've got CR10, Ender 3 V2. I've got some Ender 3, Gen 1 Ender 3, so original Ender 3s. I've got 12 Prusas, a Fusion 3, but no, I don't think anybody here has those because they're $5,000 printers. We got a lot of stuff here. We have over 30 printers. Excuse me. But you want to look at something that looks visually pleasing. And I would immediately say stay away from white filament. I don't like white filament, especially the stuff that's really, really opaque. Clear and translucent filaments hide a lot of bullshit. So if you're trying to learn, get an opaque filament, but don't get white. White tends, because of the shadowing that occurs on it, will show off problems that don't even exist. I love a good gray. I love a good gray. The gunmetal gray, Jesse, is a great color. I mean, just it's a very, very basic, darker gray color. By the way, this whole ring here was fully supported with snug supports. It came off so nice. Yeah, I love this gray because if you print it a little hot, it gets shiny, but if you print it a little cold, it stays matte. But when it's hot, you can kind of see some of that rippling. It's no big deal. This was part of the thing. It was part of the file. Something else to note. Let's show that off. Let's see if we can get it to focus on that. Will you focus? Focus, please. Oh, it's hard to see. Oh, well. Retraction lines. So you will generally not be able to get every dime of retraction marks out of your prints, at least not initially. Eventually, you can get there to where you don't even notice the fact that there was a retraction that occurred. But I believe tuning that extra 5% takes 80% of the time. Yes, a Z seam, but this is not really a Z seam. It kind of is. But what most people think of Z seams would be a vertical line, because that's where all their retractions are. You can see it in some areas, and it is somewhat common, but a lot of it is just due to movement speed and everything like that. The Mighty said, I just switched Super Slicer, and the supports still bug me a bit. The Cura ones were much easier to remove. Any tips? Yeah, tune them. Absolutely tune your supports. Cura uses thin bridges, whereas Super Slicer and previously Prusa Slicer use thick bridges. So you have to give it a little bit more wiggle room to get the support off. I like Prusa Slicer 2.4 over Super Slicer, and until Super Slicer does the pull to get the new snug supports, I won't be using it. So that's a personal thing. But I would, if you're brand new, get a slicer and stick to it. Learn one slicer, because again, when you're moving around into different slicers and messing around with it, you're going to have an issue where it doesn't necessarily, you're not doing anything wrong. The slicers are just different. They're just a little bit different. And that difference in those slicers makes it a little bit tough, right? We want the systems to be, what's the right word I'm looking for here? This is why I love recording things, because I can just cut this stuff out. I think the word that we want it to be relatable. And going from Cura to Super Slicer is a very, very, very tough move. It's going to take a lot of work. And that work is time. And if you're sitting there frustrated, like, oh, it worked better in Cura, I can't get it to work in Super Slicer. So don't. Go back to Cura. Cura is a very powerful slicer, and I would rank it in my top 3, right? It's not my favorite. I have so many Prusa printers that I just use Prusa Slicer and it works. So that's what we do. Again, excuse me, guys. It's been a very painful couple of days. I'm hoping in this new year I can get rid of this back pain. I really, really am. Herniated discs are no fun. I haven't been able to film in the past couple of days because the pain has been so bad. So hopefully I can film, you know, in the next couple of days so we can have a Wednesday video. Printed solid is a little too expensive. What else you got? Nothing. If you can't afford $19 a kilo, stop. I'm sorry. You have to understand that good quality filament comes at a price. Amazon Basics filament is more expensive. Put $50 into good filament and you're going to see that it is a big difference. Yes, it's double the price of the cheap filament, but guess what? You're having problems with that cheap filament, aren't you? That's what I thought. And I don't mean to be rude about it, but it does piss me off when people say, oh, it's too expensive. What is your time worth? If you're dealing with crap filament and you think, oh, I've got heat creep, I've got this, I've got that, I've got all these problems. It's $19 a kilo for PLA. Last I checked, I don't think Dave raised his prices. It was $19 a kilo for PLA. 1.75 millimeter Jesse. Oh, because it instantly shows you. Okay, so when you look at 1.75 Jesse, it's all PETG. You basically have to get to the second page to see the PLA. But yeah, the PLA is $19 a kilo. For reference. 3D Jake is good material too. I've had a couple of kilos from them, but not a ton of it to like fully recommend it. Again, I understand that the machines themselves can be expensive. I've spent well over $100,000 on 3D printers. I do have one particular machine that was 70 grand. But I spent well over $100,000 on 3D printers. I do believe that good quality material makes all the difference. Because if you're chasing this demon of, it could be heat creep, it could be this, it could be that, and you're having trouble of what to look for, it's not going to be great. I'm working on a whole series of videos right now. It's going a lot slower than I would like. So I'm trying. I'm updating Patreon more often. So if you guys want to follow like kind of what's going on in my life personally, go over and support us over on Patreon, especially if you're in the Discord. If you do the discourse on Discord for $10 a month, you get into the company Discord where you can come hang out and we play video games a lot. I've been playing Timberboard a lot recently. Anyways, I'm going to start a streaming channel too. That's going to be a thing. Maybe. We'll see if I can get through the pain. But yeah, sorry. I'm tangenting like crazy today. All right, Grant, back on track. Filament. I think that a good first layer doesn't mean shit if you have bad filament. I really feel that. You know, and I've had problems with what I thought, like, this is Jesse PLA Army Green. And I'm like, yeah, I was really having problems with this material. And Dave said, this is one of our harder materials to print with. For some reason, this colorant is a problem. I believe that you should buy the best machine that you can afford. So if you can afford $500, go get a Prusa Mini. If you can afford $300, an Ender 3v2 is a great machine. I've heard back and forth things on the Anycubic Viper. Is it Leica is looking at getting one? I don't know. Filament manufacturers will do sales, or printer manufacturers will do sales often. I do sometimes worry about those sales in that the sale is actually them trying to clear out old inventory so that they can replace it with something better. So just be aware there. But an Ender 3v2 is a fine printer. They're not amazing, but the one thing that Enders have that a lot of other printers don't is a massive community. A massive community. It's crazy how big the community is. And that means a couple of problems with that. One, you're going to get a lot of people with different answers to your problem. But two, you're going to get a lot of different answers to your problems. So if you have a cooling problem, you might get 4 different people with 3 different things each. Yeah, 3 different options each for you to try. And that's great fun to print it. Chris Polk asked what I think of Polymaker Filament. Is my Polyterra handy? No. I like their filament. I use their PC Max, their polycarbonate. I love their polycarbonate. Their carbon fiber polycarb is great. Polyterra is a good filament. I do find it be a little more picky than most, and it does print matte. So it's kind of rough sometimes. It shows off stuff. Sierra says they're looking to get an Ender 5 Plus to tinker with. I've seen Anycubic do sale clearouts. Too much to trust them. Friend got burned by a dead Photon V1. I have original Mars printers from Elegoo, and you can actually replace them. You replace the screens with the mono screens from the Mars 2 Pro. It works totally fine. Like, it's the same connector. And the printer doesn't know the difference. It doesn't care. So, you know, might work. But I've had great experience with Elegoo support personally. So, by the way, thanks to all the new people joining us. We appreciate you guys coming and hanging out. Make sure to drop a like on the stream. And if you feel we've earned it, you know, a couple of dollars in the super chat or over on Patreon would be awesome. It is the first of the month after all. It's the best time to join new creators. And if you are looking for new creators, I highly recommend going to check out Clockspring 3D, Fotis Mint, DSK Fernando. We have FR3D Fred, and of course, my good buddy Wexter. They are all phenomenal creators. If you're looking for creators to support, highly recommend you guys go and support them. Yeah, I feel like I came to this to initially talk about like how to tune in a 3D printer, and it came down to make sure you don't have crap materials. And you know what? That's fair. Next week is going to be a really fun podcast. We're going to have Pooch from Repcord on. We're going to be talking all about pricing your product and setting up a 3D printing business. And then the week after that, we have Sarah Gerke from Nexa 3D, which is actually going to be on my birthday. I don't think Sarah knows that, and I didn't want to tell her, but it's going to be a birthday live stream. And we're going to be talking, I don't really know what we're going to be talking about just yet. But I don't know what we're going to be talking about just yet, but we're going to be talking about some really awesome stuff. And I'm looking forward to talking with Sarah all about whatever it might be. But yeah, I want to make sure that we have good prints. And so what I'm going to do, of course, you guys, if you don't know, we have a public email address. It is youtube@3dmusketeers.com. youtube@3dmusketeers.com. It's down in the description for those that want it. Make sure if you have questions, you shoot us an email. Anybody that has emailed me, and a couple of you have, I respond. I personally respond. There's not anybody else that responds to your emails but me. Unless you have something that somebody else needs to respond to. But generally, I can handle it all. I want to help you guys get your perfect prints. And it does take time to do it. It does take a lot of time to do it. But it doesn't have to be frustrating. When you're tuning in a printer, change one variable at a time. Right? Don't change your steps per millimeter on X, Y, and Z and the E, then change your retraction, then change your filament. You've introduced so many different variables that you don't know what the problem will be. We are here to help out. And I would love, and see, it's tough for me to do like a video on good versus bad filament. It's a really, really tough video to do. One, because you're going to piss off a lot of people. And that's not great. 2, I got to spend a ton of money to make that video. I got to probably spend $1,000 to make that video to get filament from a bunch of manufacturers. And then 3, it's so bloody subjective because if something goes wrong or there's differences in temperatures, humidity, there are all these different points that people can say, well, this wasn't consistent, that we have a problem. So again, one variable at a time, use good filament. Make sure that first layer is right. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I want to make sure that we cover. Extrusion widths are a great thing. You might think I have a 0.4 millimeter nozzle. I need to have a 0.4 millimeter extrusion width. No. Do a 0.45. And then for infill, look at a 0.5. And I said it in Printfill Friday, but I'll say it here again. Don't do 100% infill, ever. Do 99999 top and bottom layers. I always find that to work better than 100% infill. I believe that infill is normally over extruded. I don't know why, but it's just in my head, right? And for some reason, 999 top and bottom layers work a lot better than 100% infill. But also realize that you don't need to have solid parts most of the time. 10% plastic, 15%, and that's your infill numbers, 10% infill, 15% infill, 20 or 25% when you need a little bit of extra strength. Strength comes from perimeters, not from infill. Now, yes, of course, if your model is completely dead solid, yes, it is going to also come from infill. But I would rather have 30 perimeters than 100% infill. It will be stronger with 30 perimeters. And CNC Kitchen did a great test on this. I know Tom has done tests on this as well, that perimeters are better than infill when it comes to strength for parts. Understand what's needed, okay? So if you're printing something that's going to go into or onto a car, PLA is not the right material. You want to look at PETG minimally, but maybe ABS or ASA. Understand with ABS and ASA, polycarbonate, some of the other higher temp materials, that running an open air, I don't know why this keeps happening. I'm sorry that I keep getting jittery. I don't know why it occurs. I'm really, really sorry, you guys. It's not the internet. It's OBS saying, hey, screw you. Which is funny because this computer can absolutely handle it. Anyways. Materials like ABS, ASA, nylon, all that do not work well on open air printers. You want to generally have an enclosure, preferably one that is heated, to run those materials well. You cannot run nylon on an Ender 3. Not easily. There are some versions of nylon that you can, but you're running right at the top end of what's possible through your extruder itself and through your hot end. If you're running the stock PTFE lined hot end, I would look at hot ends, particularly PTFE lined ones, nozzles, heat breaks, as well as the drive gears, all being wear items, and the Bowden tube, if you have a Bowden printer, all being wear items, because over time they're going to wear out. So having spares is really, really good. You can get nozzles for cheap. If you have an E3D product, get real E3D stuff. Stop buying the cheap clones. A lot of us have done it for years. I myself am guilty of it. And let's be real, the Revo is very expensive, but V6 nozzles aren't. Official nozzles are something like $6 or $7 each. And a Nozzle X is $30. Go get a damn Nozzle X. And if you do run hardened steel, you will likely have to turn up temps just a little bit. So be aware of that. But putting a hardened steel nozzle on a stock Ender 3 is like putting a turbocharger on a stock Honda Civic. It's going to be able to do a lot more, but only for a little bit. You're still limited by the drivetrain, by the brakes. And so for a printer, you're limited by the fact that you don't have an all-metal hot end, the fact that you're still Bowden versus direct drive, that you're running a crap stepper motor on your extruder, and all these other things. So before you go and upgrade your nozzle to run harder materials, look at what else you could be upgrading to make it more effective. Dominic is asking if a cheap tent enclosure is okay for ABS. I would say, one, ASA over ABS. It's UV stable, and it prints effectively the same way. You could do a tent. That's fine. I've done like cardboard boxes when I really needed to. But, you monitor that stuff all the time. Wham Bam makes the hot box. I really need to get Peter to give me an affiliate code. I need to bother him, but oh well. But Wham Bam makes the hot box. It's pretty good. You can make one yourself. I know some people have used the photo boxes, but they're kind of jank. Just understand, if you do something generic, it can be flammable, so be careful. Yeah, the Wham Bam hot box. It's a great name for a product, I think. Have I ever tried 3DX Tech? have I ever tried 3DX Tech? Have I ever tried 3DX Tech? Hell yes, I've tried 3DX Tech. Something to note about 3DX Tech. They were just sold. Matt sold the company, and I'm happy for him. But I don't know what's going to happen to it. So, I'm hesitant right now. I love 3DX Tech. I've got a buddy who lives out there by them, and he'll go buy partial spools of them and mail them to me. I love their filament. It's very expensive, but I buy my exotics from them. So we have Ultem, we have PPSU, we have Peak, all of that I've bought from them. In that drawer is my carbon fiber nylon and carbon fiber PETG that are still sealed. They are the most affordable for exotics, but exotics are very expensive. Like carbon fiber nylon is something like $80 a kilo. I will say Atomic makes prettier carbon fiber nylon. I don't know how they like, I don't know how they compare. I haven't been able to compare them side by side because I have so much carbon fiber nylon from 3DX Tech, that I haven't had a chance, but Atomic makes some really pretty like dark cherry and dark navy PETG and nylon that's got carbon fiber in it. And boy, howdy does it make for some beautiful prints. Something to note about carbon fibers and glass fibers, the layer lines freaking disappear. You don't see them anymore. The carbon fiber and the glass fiber, I don't know what it does, but it's something about that material that tends to make the layer lines completely and utterly disappear. And that is, oh God, it's so good. I love carbon fiber prints. I just wish the material was more affordable. Let me go to 3DX Tech and see what it's selling for these days. But, you know, it is expensive, but it's affordable. It's weird to say that, but it is, right? It's expensive, but it's affordable. So let me see. Yeah, the carbon fiber nylon is $58. Well, hold on. Let's see how big of a spool that is. It is $98 a kilo. Now, I know Matt personally. I've worked with Matt for many years. I like 3DX Tech. It is expensive, and yeah, that is pretty expensive. Their PA6 carbon fiber Gen 3 is a little pricey. Let me see if the nylon 12 is any cheaper. No, nylon 12 is way more expensive. So I don't know. I've always bought from them, but I have so much in stock that I'm not really looking to buy. I might look at buying some from Atomic the next time I buy, but I have seen some beautiful prints of the Atomic carbon fiber PETG in the navy blue, and I want it so bad. So bad. Same thing with the nylon. But the nice thing about adding carbon fiber to material, like a carbon fiber PLA, carbon fiber ABS, it warps a lot less. The only issue is it becomes more brittle. So carbon fiber makes the parts more brittle. But again, if you're just starting out, you probably don't need to be dealing with this. And I would not try anything that's got any like filler to it. So carbon fiber, glass fiber, even glow in the dark, that's got glass. It's a silica filler. Don't play with that stuff because it's going to ruin your brass nozzle. You're going to waller the damn thing out. And I've always joked of like, well, hey, you can just take a 0.4 and turn it into a 0.6. Unfortunately, it's not going to be an even wear all the way around, but it might be fun for us to just like run a bunch. I'll have to reach out to a company, see if they'll kick me like a kilo of carbon fiber PLA and just extrude all of it through like a bunch of printing and through a brass nozzle and see how bad it gets after a kilo. That'd be a cool video, I think. Bravo Actual asks about 3D Fuel. I've had 1 kilo from them. It wasn't bad. I'm a massive supporter of printed solid, and I think they're in basically the same price range. I have a personal relationship with Dave. I know him well. Like, we're Facebook friends. So I get to like see the behind the scenes of him buying all these really awesome bits of antique computer goodness and antique video game stuff. So I have a connection with Dave, and he also did a custom color for one of our staff members as part of the Make-A-Wish Foundation. And I got to support that. Like, you just have to. Actually, the oranges that you can see behind me right now that are not Prusa orange. Yep. it's all Brad's orange. And if you actually do business with us and you send us a 3D print to do, it will always be in Brad's orange unless you tell me a specific color. If you tell me I don't care about the color and you tell me you're from YouTube, I'll do it in Brad's orange for you. But yeah, that's really all that I got. I know there's so much that we really didn't talk about, and I'll be sure to ask some of this to Pooch from Repcord next week, because of course Pooch is amazing when it comes to 3D printing. But yeah, I think we kind of beaten this horse enough for one episode. We're an hour and a half in, so I think it's probably time to call this one, guys. I appreciate everyone coming out. If there are any final questions, throw them in the comments for me, and I'll take a look at it before we call this one a day. But yeah, thank you guys so much. If you want to, again, support us directly, you can leave super chats, you can leave stickers and crap, I think. I don't know. YouTube memberships are coming soon, and we are, of course, have our Patreon at patreon.com/3dmusketeers. I appreciate it. Lightspeed says, I think the Bridgemaster nozzle from Slice is a good nozzle that is like brass but coated so you can do abrasives. Yeah, I don't know. If I'm going to get a hardened nozzle, I'm getting a Nozzle X. Straight up. That's what I'm going to do. Anyways, guys, stay safe out there. Don't forget to call your loved ones. And as always, keep making awesome. Have a good one. This is what? Episode 17? Hell yeah. New year. January. Try to make 2022 my bitch, but we'll see what happens. I have some really, really cool stuff coming up. Assuming it's not complete and utter crap. I wrote a 5-figure check right at the end of the year for some really cool technology, and assuming it wasn't bad, I'm really excited for this. Yeah, guys, have a good one. It's afternoon for me. It's 3:30 p.m. here, but the mighty, have a good evening. Connie, we'll see you later as well, and I will see you guys next week with Pooch from Repcord. Get subscribed, leave a like, and all those things. See you later.